So it's been a while since I've done an analyzed style review. My last one was for 2001: A Space Odyssey. And I've wanted to do a video like this for a long time to kind of jumpstart an idea that I've had for a possible future segment that I do every once in a while, only for films I really want to talk about in depth. And maybe I never got to do a spoiler review for that movie when it came out, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood just so happens to be one of those movies. And I thought it'd be fun to, every once in a while, do a review for a movie that I've already seen, but I'm watching it for the second time, to see if my opinion has changed. Maybe I like the film more, maybe I like the film less, or maybe it's about the same. That's something that a lot of film critics don't like to admit. Opinions change. You like a movie more or less. It happens. Nothing is set in stone, and I think sometimes film critics can act a little pompous about their opinions, but we get swept up in movies sometimes, we don't see flaws, we get excited about things, or we just didn't get a movie on the first viewing. In the case of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I loved this movie. I reviewed it back in July, but there's a lot I want to talk about a little more in depth, particularly the ending, which is so much goddamn fun. To top it off, Sony Pictures was kind enough to send me every single Blu-ray release of this movie.
Whoa.
So thanks very much to Sony Pictures for sponsoring this video and for sending me these Blu-rays, which I will be showcasing in greater detail at the end of this video. As you guys know, I like to collect. I'm a big supporter of physical media, and I hope that it stays around for a long time. What I loved about this movie is that it feels incredibly old-fashioned. It doesn't seem like a movie that came out in 2019. It feels like a movie that was shot in the 1960s. In every way, this is Quentin Tarantino's love letter to cinephiles. And watching it a second time, I picked up on a lot of smaller storytelling details that I didn't really pay that much attention to the first time. So what is hidden exposition? Well, that's when you're told something that's going to come into play later, but it doesn't come off like exposition, someone just explaining it to you. You see a scene that involves something very specific, and you think that it has served its purpose after that scene ends. It's a contained moment that works within that scene. Namely, the flamethrower. We get a hilarious sequence showcasing one of Rick Dalton's former movies where he torches a bunch of Nazis. We get a laugh out of it and we think that's the end of it. But later, that flamethrower comes into play in glorious fashion. The other is Cliff Booth and his dog, Brandy. We get a showcase of just how well trained the dog is when Cliff is making Brandy food. It's a detailed scene where as he makes his macaroni and cheese, the dog waits very patiently for the food until he clicks his teeth together and the dog lunges. Cute, entertaining scene, showcases how well he trained his dog and the great relationship they have together. That's the end of it. Actually, it's not. When Manson's followers are about to kill Cliff at the end of the film, we understand that Brandy has been waiting this entire time for permission to maul them to death. And that's hidden exposition. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is the perfect movie for Tarantino to be making at this point in his career. As Hollywood seems to be moving more and more every day towards massive blockbusters and less original filmmaking, Tarantino remains one of the last bastions of old Hollywood. Which is funny because he rose in the 90s, which is not considered old Hollywood, but his films all feel that way. They feel of a completely different era, a time when movie making was less concerned about money and box office returns, and more concerned about pleasing an audience and being original and unique. Not only is this movie a love letter to cinephiles, it's one to the 1960s as well. The recreation of old Hollywood is stunning. The buildings, the signs, the banners, and of course, the driving. He also takes a lot of time to showcase 1960s advertisements, shows and technology and things like that that really encase you in the time period and setting. Every time someone's driving, there's an old-fashioned advertisement on the radio. There's even commercials that play over the end credits. And as usual, Tarantino loves unorthodox casting choices, like actors he may have watched in TV shows when he was younger. In particular, Nicholas Hammond plays the film director that Rick Dalton works for. Who's Nicholas Hammond, you might ask? He's the Amazing Spider-Man from the 1970s TV show, which features the most funky-ass 1970s soundtrack ever. I talked a little bit in my original review about his dedication to one joke. There's a flashback sequence in this film that's 9 minutes long, when Cliff Booth is on the roof trying to repair the antenna. At the 41-minute mark, he remembers why he has a bad relationship with some people in Hollywood. And then 9 minutes later, he says,
Fair enough.
If a writer showed up to a meeting with a spec script like that today, he'd be turned down in an instant. That's why movies like this are always going to be special to me. They represent a type of filmmaking you just don't see anymore. Another example, there's this great scene with this insanely impressive young actress, Julia Butters, where her and DiCaprio just talk about a book and acting techniques. But it does serve a purpose because Rick Dalton is looking at this book, talking about the character in the book, realizing that he loves this book because he relates to the character. And this scene also features one of the movie's funniest lines.
Poor Easy Breezy. I'm practically crying and I haven't even read it.
About 15 years you'll be living it.
What?
And at one point, while Rick is filming a movie, we actually see the film played out in real time, as if we're watching the shots done by the cameraman, even including outtakes and resets. But strangely, possibly my favorite scene in this movie is a very simple one. It's Rick and Cliff sitting down to watch an episode that they shot. You get a shot of the television, and you hear their commentary. Honestly, I could watch an entire film with them talking about it. Like, this is just two guys watching a movie. Like, this is the shit we do, and we're seeing these mega stars doing it. Now, what I really want to talk about are the final 30 minutes. I was dying to discuss these moments in my original review, but I didn't want to ruin it for you. Like Inglourious Basterds, Tarantino decides to rewrite history. Manson's followers, who brutally murdered Sharon Tate in real life, are absolutely wrecked. And during this entire sequence, Cliff is high on acid. This entire sequence is some of the most fun I've had at the movies this year. It's the type of visceral filmmaking that I expect from Tarantino. I was just happy to watch a filmmaker have fun making a movie, free from studio constraints, not tied down by a bunch of regulations and focus groups. It's refreshing, and I felt very cathartic at the end, seeing this version of history that just seemed a lot better than what we really got. Which is why in so many ways this movie does sometimes feel like a fairy tale. I mean, it's called Once Upon a Time in Hollywood for a reason. So has my opinion changed on second viewing? Yeah, I like the movie even more now. On first viewing, I didn't know what to expect. I was constantly absorbing the movie and trying to figure out what it meant and what he was going for. On second viewing, I was just able to say, this is just a filmmaker having a blast. And as a viewer, I did too. So let's talk about those Blu-rays. This is not something I do very often on my channel, but I might do more in the future because, as I said, I love physical media, I love collecting, and I do kind of get a little bit of excitement out of talking about this kind of stuff. Right off the bat, a rarity for a Tarantino release, these have additional scenes. There's some really fun new advertisements, James Marsden as Burt Reynolds, an extended sequence of Rick Dalton singing, an extended episode of Bounty Law, and there's that Charles Manson scene that we saw in the trailer, and you can get exclusive access to the set with an in-depth look at the film's production design, cinematography, costume design, cars, and more. So there's the main 4K Ultra HD Collector's Edition. It has 2 discs, the 4K, the Blu-ray, and a digital code, an all-new exclusive mini edition of Mad Magazine inspired by the film, and a collectible vintage Rick Dalton poster from the film, and a 45 vinyl record with 2 of the soundtrack's best tunes. And it also has a turntable adapter, which I was able to use on mine. And damn does it sound good. The Target edition includes an exclusive in-world film magazine with articles about Rick Dalton, Cliff Booth, and inside the secret parties of Tinseltown, the top tracks of 1969, and some vintage ads. There's also the Best Buy exclusive steelbook packaging, which has an image of Cliff Booth's dog, Brandy, and the Walmart release, which has exclusive limited edition collectible postcards. All of these versions are available right now, and there's a link in the description below where you can learn more about them. So guys, thank you so much as always for watching. I definitely want to make more videos like this in the future if a film comes along that I never got to do a spoiler review for, but I want to talk more in depth about them. And if the Blu-ray release is coming out or is out, it'll give me an opportunity to talk a little bit more about that too, because as I said, I get excited about this physical media stuff. I'm definitely a sucker for it, and it's something that I enjoy sharing with you guys. So guys, thank you so much as always for watching. Look forward to more reviews very soon, and if you like this, you can click right here and get Stuckmanized.